Martin. I'm not able to see very clearly any questions and so on, but I think you're going to manage that. So yeah, as you know, Martin, I'm not sure quite how long we've had an interaction through the APM, but it's been quite some period of time, at least 10 years, if not longer. So delighted to be back involved and presenting. And what I'm going to be talking about is an almost direct follow-on from the final comments from David. So because I'm going to actually talk about, well, how do people distinguish between each other, and what does that mean? What do you do with that knowledge? And we're going to go through that. So little bits, that's what we're going to be covering today. So we are going to be covering a little bit about the distinguishing between different engagement and communication styles, just one of many ways that you can be doing that. And also a little bit about how to adapt your communication style. So this is not a training course, but we'll kind of just pick up on a few key bits that might be of interest. And building in this, what does that actually mean for the way that you interact in projects and doing project management, which is maybe quite a unique concept. So myself, I'm involved in a number of things at the moment. It's a little bit of the background. I'm involved recently with Parliament, working for the CIO on a multi-billion-pound infrastructure programme. I'm currently involved with a Baltic state government and implement the national programme management approach, nuclear decommissioning authority on risk and assurance, competence and capability development, and just taking on a role as a programme director for a major digital programme for a government agency, amongst a few other things to do with climate change, project data analytics, and so on. So I will give you my distinction later, and you'll see why it is I get involved in things like that, because it's what makes me tick and excites me and so on. So what we're going to do first of all is talk about your communication and engagement style. Now, as you likely all know, there are many different ways in which you can help to identify and distinguish between different people. We are all unique, so this is not trying to box somebody, but it's sometimes useful to say that person is more X than Y, or their approach is slightly different from mine, but what does that mean in reality? And there are many different models. Many of them are based around a DISC-based model, which we're going to cover. Use strengths deployment inventory to great effect. Use Myers-Briggs, and recently I've started using something called GC Index about the impact people. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. And if you think about it, we are all as unique as those cuts through trees. And that means that what happens is that the way that you act, you do all these different things differently. You communicate, you delegate, you build teams, you make decisions, you review materials, you do all those things differently. And the tool that I've been using now for the last few years, and hopefully, as Martin said, you have had a chance to complete, called IMA, is a fantastic tool. And it's simple, it's not simplistic, it's simple, easy to use. Stands for identify, modify, and adapt. So you identify your own and other person's style, you modify it, and then you adapt it based on the situation and context. And it's a color based. There are lots of them. You may have done insights. You may have done any number of them. I'll make a contentious statement. They're all broadly similar because they're all based off of the base set of theories and base psychological model. Although I would stress this is not a psychological instrument in any shape or form. The colors we use, we talk about high, so we talk about high red, high blue, and so on, because it's predominantly, we know everyone's a mixture of everything, but there's usually a kind of predominant style that people have. And within that style, usually that's your comfort zone where you want to and are most comfortable in being. I find I'm very insightful, it's effective, it's sustainable, and because of the link you've got, people use it all the time just within their own teams. So what we're going to do today is just cover off what's the understanding about self between the colours, a little bit about insights about relationships, touch on teams, and often we get into organisational, but we're not doing that today. So how does IMA work? What's at the base of it? Well, at the absolute foundational level, what they're doing is trying to identify how different human beings distinguish themselves in two axes. So this is one axis, which is your level of openness. So readiness and willingness to share and show feelings, enter into relationships and so on. I should say at this point, Martin has or will make available all of this material, and in fact, actually more, given the timescale. I've had to hide quite a lot. So you've got available all of that. So I'm conscious I'm going to go through this very quickly to try and get some time at the end for questions. So just be conscious of that. I am going to go through this quickly. So this axis is about the way that someone thinks, the level of openness. So their orientation more towards task, more self-contained. The other end of the spectrum, the more kind of orientation is towards relationships and being open. And those are some of the characteristics you can see in the boxes at either end of the spectrum. You then have another distinction, which is around the level of assertiveness that a person has, their need to move forward, and their degree of directness, their desire to share what they're thinking, and so on. And that you have two extremes again. You have the kind of non-assertive or slow to assert, or assertive and fast to assert. So you've got people at different ends of that spectrum, and everyone in between. And if you put the two axes again, I'm conscious, I'm just going through this. This is not a training, just simply giving you the basic concepts around this, is you then end up with the two axes, one around task relationship, another around non-assertive, assertive. And you end up with the different colours. You end up with each of these four. So high green, high red, high blue, and high yellow, each of them sitting within their own quadrant. And the kind of things that are important, you know, we are all a blend. Everyone has got a high colour typically. That's your comfort zone. If you respond to people in the style that they're most comfortable with, just to pick up David's point he just made at the end of his talk, if it's not how you are comfortable in responding, you should think about how that person wants you to respond, what's comfortable to them, especially if you're a project manager or in projects world. Your job is to engage with people and to often get them to do things and motivate them and so on. So it's important that you think about doing it for what's important to them. So that's very briefly, what are the kind of what are the strengths and so on of some of these different colors. You know, blues, if you can remember, you know, the non-assertive and the relationship focus. They'll make sure ideas are carried out on behalf of the team. They bring stability. I'm just doing the strengths bit to begin with. There's a warmth, very much about building relationships. The green is still on the non-assertive, but their focus is more about the task than it is the relationship. So it's about detail, getting the project done, being precise and efficient. The red, we now switch over onto the red, and that is assertive, and that's still about task. So it's all about focus, getting results, being in charge of things often. And then the yellow, non-assertive, so assertive with a focus on relationship. So very much about persuading, bringing people together, wanting people to collaborate, and enthusiasm. And as you can see, when you're engaging, if you just summarize it down at the base level as to how do you best engage with them, you need to be sensitive to a blue's feelings, be precise with a green, be to the point with a red, and have fun, which sounds a glib thing, but I tend to find that, you know, I'm constantly trying to bring lightness to the things that I'm doing if you want to engage with me positively. But like everything in life, there are strengths, but you also have issues when you're under stress as well. So you can see what some of those things are. So I'm going to just go on now to give an example about just how that might play out in reality. Again, conscious this is a lot of rich material here, but if you bear with me, all of this is available. If you can imagine a blue and a red working together on a project, And let's have the scenario that the blue is the project manager working with a red team member. Well, the blue is going to be possibly wanting to spend a lot more time discussing things, getting other people, getting feedback and comment. The red just wants to move ahead. They want to get on. They want to do stuff. So the red conceivably might find the blue as being slow. They're not acting quickly enough. They're not moving forward quickly enough. The blue might think the red is moving too quickly and they're being slightly reckless. Again, kind of extremes that I'm describing, but that's a possibility. And when I've do this with teams and groups, often this starts to bring lots of wry smiles to go, yeah, that maybe starts to explain why I've got a perception of X of somebody, because it's just that they act in different ways. And there's a little bit more detail, a little bit being pleasant about the kind of thing, the characteristics that you might have around how best to engage with the blue versus how best to engage with the red. You can see they're pretty different. And when people start understanding the distinction, that is absolutely gold dust. And then the other extreme is you have the green and the yellow. So the green, very about analysis, persistent, and so on. And the yellow is all about new ideas. So the yellow, if you may even be able to have guessed so far, that I would very much strongly associate myself with being a high yellow, about ideas bringing things together, which is great if you're a yellow, but it means you're constantly adding things in, constantly looking for options, possibly going off at tangents when it's maybe not appropriate. It's about getting the details, sticking to process and structure. So yellows might see greens as being overly structured, overly dogmatic about things, and the greens may look at a yellow and going, you are not sticking to any form of structure. This is getting chaotic in the work that you are doing. Again, neither of those are right. They're just the kind of perceptions that you may have with the different colours. And if you look at then what you end up with is these 4 different colours. And it's whether you're using this or any other model, for an individual to get this level of insight about themselves and then start to think about where somebody might be. So for example, I was working with Martin and I knew he was either one side of the axis or the other, or diametrically opposite. That gives us both a great insight about what should we be thinking about and modifying about our own behaviours around this. So, and the kind of things we do, again, this is an exercise you could be doing. You can use this for your team if you want. You could engage with think about an exercise of if you've got to engage with a critical stakeholder. Quick decisions required. How do you best get that positive decision? What are the things that you might modify? Well, you might modify what you share with them, when you share, where you do it, how you do it, who actually does the engagement. All of that could come from having an insight. And if you base it around the colour of one of an infinite number of layers that help to identify what a person is, we're just very conscious, just one layer through a person. There's an infinite number of layers that add up to what makes a person. But this is one way of going, maybe I'm not going to stick to my style, I'm going to go with another style. And Martin had asked the question as well of David and the thing about virtual working. Well, I put down here some thoughts I had about what are the influences for the success of virtual working. You can scan your eye down through that list. And then I highlighted in red what insights that you might get around, say, the distinctions of colour, how they would help. Well, if for example, what is important around virtual working, my goodness, do you need good methods of communication? Is I should know. Say, taking up this program director role recently, a large complex team, is the method of communication. Well, different colours want different things in different ways at different times. So, not just a technicality of writing a communications document, but actually thinking, crikey, we need to appeal to at least 4, if not 7 billion different variations about how people want to communicate. So hopefully that's given you an initial base understanding about how you could distinguish between people and some of the traits and differences between people and what the implications of that might be. So that's like a base level conversation. Then I wanted to touch on to just thinking about from a team. Well, that's great about you and you to one other person, but what happens when you bring a team in together? I'll leave that up just for a few moments to let you have a little bit of a chuckle. You know, that's the kind of structure that you might have within a team of all sorts of things going in. The colours, I should say, have got nothing on this. I've got nothing to do with the IMA colours, but it's the complications that you get within a single team. So let's just go back to the axes that we had and give you some examples about team profiles. Now that's a team profile from some work we did at a bank with a group of sponsors. So these are all board level. And as you can imagine, you've got 13 people on to the right of the assertive and 3 people to the left. So you can start to make, it started to help identify or explain why certain processes and systems weren't being stuck to, because everyone was very assertive and they wanted to see action. And sometimes some of the processes we have in the projects world can be construed as constraining and adding bureaucracy. I don't think that, but I'm just saying if misapplied, they can. And that starts to cause attention. So this helps to explain why you might get attention about people sticking or not sticking to it. Also, you get into team issues like, you know, the 2 high greens and the 1 high blue may start to feel very uncomfortable, may not be listened to, because there's a lot more assertive people who tend to be more vocal and assertive. So the 3 people may not be listened to by the 13th. So all of that richness you get from coming out considering things in this way. So that's just one example. That's another example here from a construction consultancy that I was working with, and they were looking to modify their approach and what they offered to the market. Now, with that profile, that meant that they were very much in the high green. That's where the centre of gravity was. They were looking to do more of the high yellow. And that started to have an impact to saying, well, actually, the centre of gravity is top left, but we think the long-term direction for the organisation should be bottom right. When you start mapping in seniority and so on, you start to think, how easy is that move going to actually be? So it gives you, there's all sorts of things that you can be doing with this based on that base insight around the distinction between people. And, you know, another exercise here, which again, you're more than welcome to have a play with. If you want to have a little play with this in the team profiles is, you know, if you start to think about how a colour's dispersed, what's missing, and how might that affect how people feel, what does the team maybe need at this stage of the project? You know, there's lots of richness in this you could talk about, but different projects need different styles of people at different times, given the context within which they are. People are isolated. So these are all the kind of things that are important for you to consider and think about. And, you know, the kind of ideal project team, you could say, you know, each colour has got its ideal place within a team, you know, to be certain ideas are carried out. The blue, to make sure that detail is covered and it's done in the way that was designated. The green, the red, are we getting the results? And the yellow, are we making sure that we're thinking broadly enough, we're bringing people along together? So, and diversity as well. I think this is just one of many, many aspects around diversity. And I know that this was an important thing, Martin, that you wanted picked up. You know, this is just one of many reports that talks about the, you know, diversity and the importance of it. And I just picked out 3 different quotes here. You know, the talent of the team depends on having diverse people. What I've talked about is just one form of diversity. There is every other, from ethnic, sexual, etc., that adds to the richness of that diversity. You want to bring a lot of diverse lenses. Well, just bringing 3 other IMA lenses to bear on a problem is really beneficial in its own right. And this, you want diversity to move in the direction of science and away from feel-good metaphorical statements. Well, actually, I'm not suggesting for a minute you go out and say, we're missing greens. We need to go out and just find greens. Doesn't matter what experience they are or what they would do in the team. That's a nonsense. It's simply, if you've got these distinct models of distinction, it helps you start thinking, maybe we have got a gap here. Is that causing us some issue? If it is, then yes, it's something that should be looked at and being addressed. And I know that the work I've done recently around the, so give you a real practical example here. This is an initiative I'm working on with Jonathan Norman, whose name may mean something to you. And what we did is we brought people together. So, this is Eddie Obeng, here's Manon Bradley, Antonio from PMI days, Eloise around climate. And we asked these people, they asked a question, and then we got individual responses. So we used a platform called Opiner. And why did we do it? Because we wanted the idea of cognitive diversity. So what would 12 people think on a particular question? And it was fantastic, because what you realize is the diversity of views, and something like IMA just gives you one view of that. But it was a real practical, this is ongoing, 2 more questions to go on it. So it's been a fantastic initiative. Now, I'm very conscious of, I was being very optimistic with time, and I'm just going to show these slides. I don't have time to go through, just so that we've got time for some questions, if there are any. But we have actually got another, I've got a final section in this, which you can have a look through. And if I just give you the summary of what it is, it basically is, if you can imagine applying IMA into a particular area of project management. This is all within the Praxis framework. So it's like taking the insights we had earlier, slightly different model of the way of presenting the colours, but it's exactly the same, just slight different way of presenting the colours. And it's saying, how does that impact how you do these different aspects of project management? All of this is available on the Praxis framework to have a look at. And that is something that may be of interest to you if you think, how do I take this people and human insight and then apply it to the actual mechanics of projects world? And I'll just wrap up with one statement, which is, I do get frustrated when people say, we'll do the team leadership insight development stuff in the afternoon because we've got a 1 day away with the team, and we'll do the business in the morning. That is very frustrating, because what you should do is all this insight stuff and team stuff first, and then do the content, because then you go, does that insight from the morning give us an insight as to why we've got the problems that we have and we're talking about, and maybe possible solutions to them. So at that, I will finish up. As I say, Martin or the APM will be making all this material available. So I'll stop sharing, and hopefully it will pop up, and we can have a chat if there's any questions come in. Assuming, of course, Martin, there are any questions.
Yes, we've got some questions, Donnie, but thank you very, very much for that really interesting insight. I think the session that we just had actually is stitching all 3 elements together, and I'm sure there'll be some more questions sort of interrelating between each of the sessions as well. I've got one question coming at the moment. Thinking about international working, is the world pretty balanced with colour profiles, or do you see a predominance of colours in different countries?
Right. Well,
Hertzberg's work, isn't it, really? But
we're talking about kind of organ grinders and monkeys here. So I'm the monkey using IMA. If I had James Knight, who was the creator of IMA on the call, he's much better placed. I have used this internationally, but James would likely say it's pretty similar in most countries, we think. I mean, nobody's got the statistics because nobody's ran this across billions of people about the split, but you would imagine it's the same. But the difference is, and this, so IMA is one layer, it's cultural perspective then gets applied in, because I did quite a lot of work in Israel. I loved doing the work. And in Israel and in other countries, people have got a different way of communicating on top of their own colour. So you might perceive somebody as being more assertive, but it's literally the way that the language is structured, and the way that sentence structure comes out in English. So somebody gave the great example, you know, if I in the UK, you might, or let's use England, you want the window, it's a bit cold, you go, oh, it's a bit cold in here. Is there any chance of closing the window? Somebody in Israel, as they pointed out, may go, will you close the window? And if you went no, they might go, fine. So it sounds like it was an instruction, but it wasn't. It sounded like they were assertive, but they weren't. So I had to learn all that. Again, be careful applying a model like IMA or any similar. It's only one lens to see the world through. There are others, and it's a great question. Cultural does impact for sure.
Yep. Okay. Good stuff. Have you seen any indication about neurodiversity on the colours? You had any feeling about how that works or might work?
Crikey. Again, you need to be awful careful about applying any further levels of insight about, you know, which colours better in a conflict situation, or which ones get more diversity and ability to flex, etc., etc. That's where the, you know, if we sliced me and you, Martin, through the middle, we'd have slightly different IMA colour, but there'd be 500,000 other layers you need to add in. So I won't answer that one if you don't mind. I've got an opinion, but it's purely an opinion.
No, I agree. I don't think there's any answers on this sort of stuff. I think it's being aware of it, and having it in the front, trying to have it in the front of your mind when you're dealing with other people, trying to understand where they're coming from, and also to understand where you are as well, particularly as project leaders, because that sort of self-awareness is one of the sort of key attributes of a leader, to know where you are.
But to the point, actually picking up adaptability is now a key competence, forgetting the projects world that, you know, that literally business and organizations are looking for. So it is true. The layer of adaptability on top of IMA is pretty important as well. Because if somebody says, I'm a high green, you go, yeah, I know you're a high green, but that's not the situation you're in. And the person goes, well, I'm a high green. You're like, oh, this is a bit of a, you must have had that in the complex work you've been involved with, going, I need you to be a wee bit red and quite a bit of yellow for a period of time. And if somebody's not adaptable, you know, we're in a world where everyone needs to be flexing quite a little bit, given the pace of change and the needs that they have on projects.
Quite, yes. We picked up adaptability in one of the sessions this morning, and I think it's really important. I know I did the test. I've done lots of these in the past. I came out as high green, but I also know I can be pretty high red when I need to as well. So sure. we are bits of everything, and it depends. And
of course, Martin, I know fine well you must have a lot of traits of high yellow. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this as well.
That's true. It's probably slightly out of my comfort zone, but I know I can do it when I need to. Absolutely. I think that's probably about our time is up now. It's sort of time for lunch and a break, and everyone can sort of get some refreshments. Please go back to the platform, go and do some networking as well. Go and visit our sponsors and ask them questions. A lot of them are there, and you can pick up some sort of issues that weren't discussed sort of this morning, please. So please do that. So Donnie, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the rest of our speakers. And I will see you after lunch at 1 o'clock.